Shells, Rocks, and Fossil Talks. I am your resident paleontologist, Jennifer. This is my self-proclaimed psychotic sister, Megan. And we are throwing a new segment at you. We're going to call it Throwback Thursdays, where we talk about different time periods in the geologic timescale and various things that go with it. We are going to talk about...
What is the Cambrian period?
Cambrian period is the very first period of the Paleozoic era. So this is the era prior to the Mesozoic, which is the dinosaurs. The Cambrian, up until quite recently, is usually where, like, we started it as this is when life shows up in the fossil record. We now have stuff that shows up in the Ediacaran in the Precambrian era, just before the Cambrian. We can get into that later, but for the most part, this is when most life appears in the fossil record. We call this, colloquially, the Cambrian explosion, because this is when most of the major groups of animals that we see today showed up. So those groups were Brachiopoda, so they're a type of shelled animal, kind of similar to clams, built a little different. We have Echinodermata, which are things like starfish. There are no starfish in the Cambrian, but their ancestors show up then. Then we have Arthropoda, which is probably our biggest group out there. That's all of our, like, insects and bugs and, like, arachnids and things like that. Now, there were no insects yet. Our arthropods were represented by trilobites, which are super cool. And that coming from somebody who doesn't like invertebrates. Trilobites are cool. We have Archaeocyathids, which is a really fancy word for sponges. Then we have Mollusca, which is all our mollusks, so snails, octopus, squid, so their ancestors show up then. Then we have Hemichordata, so these are not quite vertebrates, but they're heading that way. These are represented by graptolites in the Cambrian fauna, and not very many graptolites.
Have you actually ever explained what a vertebrate is?
Come on, show a little backbone, will ya?
I like to assume adults know the difference between invertebrates and vertebrates.
Well, I've met some stupid adults.
Fair enough. Everything up until now, those are all invertebrates. So these are things that don't have a backbone. That would be, you know, your spine. This nice thing that keeps you erect. So everything up until this point, no backbone.
Baby got back.
Our Hemichordata has got this weird setup that's not quite a backbone, which is why it's half back. And then, of course, we have Chordata, which are our vertebrates. That's us. This group leads to us. It leads to cats, fish, anything with a backbone. And in this time period, it was represented by jawless vertebrates. Jaws are actually quite complicated. Who knew? So these things were probably filter feeders, just like all of our invertebrates were at the time. Well, maybe not all of them. Some of them had cool little sea scorpions. Look up sea scorpions.
Not to mention the pincers.
So they're represented by jawless vertebrates, usually jawless fishes. But those are all of our major animal groups, aside from a handful. And they all showed up during the Cambrian. The Cambrian's just, I know, it's super fascinating. I don't study things in the Cambrian. There's no dinosaurs. Dinosaur paleontologist. However, really cool animals. Now, just because everything is represented for things that live today, it does not mean that this fauna would look anything like today. If you look up Cambrian, holy crap, this stuff is weird. And we will go through some of these animals in later episodes, so look forward to that. But until then, you guys have a good week and we'll fossilize you later.